Good evening to all of you, and I do wish that I could have seen you in person, but during obviously this COVID crisis, it's been unfortunate that we can't do that. But first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much. In the last couple of weeks, I've had, unfortunately, my daughter in and out of hospital. And what I did notice and experience, the cleaners, more importantly, environmental services, extra workload you've been doing. Believe it or not, after 3 hours waiting in there to see a doctor or nurse, the only person that approached me to say, would you like a blanket, was a cleaner. She gave me a nice warm blanket. I put it on my daughter, who was freezing, because right now the ventilators in Children's Hospital is actually a lot more colder than normal, because there's been a lot of COVID cases and they have the resus full of a lot of children. So I want to say to all the cleaners out there, I understand you've got increased workloads with obviously cleaning chairs more often now and tables and what have you, and it's not easy. And I've seen you also, your extra PPE equipment that you have to do, the masks, the goggles and the actual aprons, etc. But more importantly, I don't want to talk too much because I want to hear about you, have your feedback, which is more important than ever. We want to present to you exactly what you're going to get. The current EBA has been very difficult to negotiate. Back in 2015-16, it was a lot easier. This government today claims they've got no money, and the COVID crisis, they've taken all the money and they don't have much left. But we weren't going to give up. When I say you're getting 2%, it's not just 2% in relation to your wages increase. It's a lot more than 2%. So yes, it's a 2%, which is a policy of the government. And what we've done is attached further entitlements on top of that, which is called pillars. But David's going to explain that more in detail. So you'll see, you'll actually probably be getting more than that, up to like 15 to 20%. And really, you're not getting just the 8% across the 4 years. There's a bonuses that you're getting. So you're not just getting 2%. You're actually going to get bonuses along the way. In normal reality, when we do EBA negotiations, you get a sign-on bonus. You're not getting one. You're probably going to get 3 or 4 bonuses as the years go by. So what I would like you to please listen to and understand more importantly is this time the government policy has changed. But thanks to David Eden, our Assistant Secretary, Cameron Granger, our Industrial Officer Manager, they've negotiated so hard on your behalf to get you the best possible outcome, which has to be done in a different mechanism that we've ever done. Today, any union that has to negotiate EBA, they're getting only 1.5%. But you're not getting 1.5%. You're not just getting 2%. You're not just getting 5 or 10. You're getting a lot more. So I don't want to go too much about that because I want to give a lot of opportunity for you to ask questions, to clarify anything that we've said, and give you the opportunity and to be quite involved throughout the whole presentation that we've got. And finally, to all the workers, thank you again. We hope to see you very soon and very quickly. But now over to David Eden, our Assistant Secretary, to give you the presentation. Good to see you all. Bye.
Thank you very much for that, Diana. I know Diana's very exhausted tonight, spending so much time in and out of hospital and with her daughter. So thank you very, very much for the intro and the pump up. So what I might do is just get straight into the presentation. If Jose can bring up the PowerPoint, and we'll go straight to slide 2. Quite often what will happen is that we as union organisers and officials will talk about enterprise bargaining, and we see our members' eyes glaze over as though we're talking some kind of foreign language, and in a way it is. I mean, we're talking industrial relations lingo all day, every day, and we've got a thorough understanding of how it all works. Our members don't. So what I thought I'd do is just give you a really basic rundown of what enterprise bargaining is. So I like to use the cake analogy, where the modern award is the cake and an enterprise bargaining agreement is those little enhancements on top of the cake, the icing, the lollies, and hopefully the candles that are also sitting on top there. So what happens is during bargaining, prior to bargaining, we survey our members, we engage with our members, our organisers are out having discussions with our members to see exactly what you'd like as a shopping list in your enterprise bargaining agreement. If you had a wish list, what would be in it? Well, the employers also have a shopping list, and what most members don't realise is that the employers also develop a log of claims. So what happens is that we serve the employers a log, your wish list. They also serve a wish list on us, and bargaining then starts to take place. And it's a little like, you know, selling a car privately. You'll always throw a bit of extra on it, knowing full well that you'll have someone come along and want to negotiate you down in price. They end up walking away thinking they've got a fantastic deal, and you've got exactly what you've wanted to sell your vehicle for. So bargaining is sort of like that, where we always embellish it. We throw all the candles and the lollies and the icing on top, knowing full well that we're going to end up somewhere a little less than that, and the employers will want to try and let you eat cake. So on with the next slide. Thanks, mate. So the government's wages policy, we've been touching on this for a while, and to give you a bit more of an explanation, is that there were a number of things within the government wages policy. You could have taken a 2.5% 12-month rollover like the health professionals did. So don't negotiate anything else in your enterprise bargaining agreement. All you can do is negotiate your wages at 2.5%. The health professionals took them up on that option. But guess what? Now they fall firmly inside the new government wages policy of 1.5%. So if I was a health professional, I'd be very, very angry right now, because they've most certainly been duped, and they're not going to be able to negotiate as good a wage deal as what they probably could have 12 months ago. Diana also touched on other government wages pillars, and we knew that we as a union were very, very well placed to maximise what's known as Wage Pillar 3. So what's in Wage Pillar 3? That is where we can support other government policies, and the TAFE system is a really good example of where we can support the TAFE system, because our membership typically has either no formal qualifications, or they might have a certificate 3 or a certificate 4 now and wish to go on and do a diploma. So we're able to support through reviewing our classification structures, investing in our careers advisor, workplace trainers, and funneling our members into the TAFE system. We're able to support another government initiative, and as a result, we've got additional wage uplifts as a result of that. Another area that Pillar 3 comes into play is where there has been a classification structure that may well have been not benefiting out of enterprise bargaining as well as other groups over a number of agreements. And the food services or kitchens are a prime example of that, where their classification structure really hasn't been reviewed since the mid-80s, and we're able to access additional funds for the food services groups out of that Pillar 3. And also, finally, where there has been clearly identified a disadvantaged group, and it might be that you've got a particular classification group that's mainly female orientated, for example, and we can get additional funds for wages and entitlements through Pillar 3 to address inequity in the workplace. So even where there's males and females in the same job, and women typically earning less, in more particularly retiring with less in their pocket, we've been able to get additional funds from the government to help address that. Next slide, thanks, mate. So let's start with the extra weeks annual leave. If you're a shift worker, you're already getting 5 weeks annual leave. Well, guess what? You're getting an additional week on top of that, 6 weeks annual leave for shift workers. So if you're working weekends and you're getting that 5th week annual leave at the moment, you're going to get 6 weeks annual leave a year. If you aren't a shift worker and you're currently getting 4 weeks annual leave a year, guess what? 5 weeks annual leave a year you'll be getting under this proposed enterprise bargaining agreement. Fantastic opportunity to spend more time with your family and travelling. It doesn't come with without a catch though, and the catch is on the next slide. Thank you very much, Jose. How's it going to work? Well, essentially, we've taken exactly what the nurses have in their enterprise bargaining agreement, and also the medical scientists in the public hospitals. So for them to get the additional week's annual leave, they've had a trade-off, and the medical scientists did it 4 years ago, and the nurses did it quite a number of years ago. So they've had it for a long time now, the nurses. So the trade-off is where you're currently, if you work a public holiday and get paid double time and a half, your new rate will be double time if you work a public holiday. If you are a full-time employee and you're rostered off on a public holiday, you get 1.5 times your usual pay. The new agreement will be single time. If you're a part-time employee under the current agreement, if you ordinarily work that day of the week, and they'll go back over your rosters and look at whether or not you're ordinarily on that day of the week. If you're working 50% or more occasions on a Tuesday, for example, and the public holiday falls on a Tuesday, you get paid time and a half. If you don't ordinarily work it, you don't get paid it. Under the new arrangement, regardless of whether you would ordinarily work that day of the week or not, you would get your average hours worked on that day. What's happening is that fewer and fewer, I should say, members are getting an entitlement, a rostered off entitlement, mainly because there are so many part-time employees across our classifications, and the hospitals are manipulating the rosters in such a way that fewer and fewer people are getting an entitlement to the rostered off benefit. Or what's happening is that the employer will roster you, whether you're full-time or part-time, the Monday, Tuesday off, for example, and the public holidays on Wednesday, and they'll approach you and say, look, Wednesday's going to be a quiet day, it's a public holiday, we're going to give you an additional day off. And even now as it stands, they give you an additional day off. It's not time and a half, because it's not your rostered day off. You've had them. That's Monday, Tuesday. This is an additional day off. It's your usual pay. So what we've found is that over the last 10 to 15 years, with more and more people choosing to work part-time and not full-time, or being employed part-time and not full-time, fewer and fewer people are having a rostered off benefit for public holidays. Next slide. Thanks, mate. Next slide, thanks, Jose. Long service leave after 7 years. So this is going to be phased in over the life of the agreement. And once again, we're essentially taking the nurses' clause that they've just introduced into their enterprise bargaining agreement a couple of months ago. And what will happen is that as of July this year, if you've got 9 years service, you can access your long service leave on a pro rata basis based on the public sector, on the state Long Service Leave Act. After next year, 1 July next year, you can access your long service leave after 8 years, and the following year and thereafter, you'll be able to access your long service leave after 7 years. Now, long service leave is becoming more and more of a pipe dream for younger workers. They're more transient. They don't stay with the same employer for long enough to get to 10 years for their long service leave. This is going to be a great opportunity for younger workers to finally get access to long service leave. And who knows, they might choose to stay in the industry if they can get access to long service leave, have a break, and might even use it to have some time off to complete some further education and hopefully advance their career in the health industry. Next slide, thanks, mate. So as I was mentioning before, there's fewer and fewer full-time employees working in the health industry. And a part of the reason for that is that hospitals aren't employing people full-time. They're not replacing full-timers with full-timers. And we're seeing more and more often that employees are getting employed at 37.5 hours a week just to ensure that they don't get an ADO. What we've introduced through this enterprise bargaining agreement, if you're working 37 hours a week or more, you have an entitlement to a ADO once a month. And what you do is approach your employer, say you want a system of work that provides for an ADO once a month. What that means is that you're going to have to work the additional hours to accrue the ADO. So you'll go from working 37 hours a week to 40 hours a week, but once a month you'll be able to take an ADO, and your employer can't unreasonably refuse the request for a system of rostering to accrue an ADO. So that's a great outcome for our members as well. Next slide, thanks, mate. Now, as we know, employers are not replacing full-time employees with full-time employees. They're trying to screw as many reduce their hours and try and keep the same level of work out of those reduced hours. What we've done is this union's been working with WorkSafe Victoria for nearly 2 years now, developing some guidance material for employers to deal with workplace fatigue. And what this enterprise bargaining agreement does is it embeds the WorkSafe's guidance on dealing with workplace fatigue into the agreement. So where we've got workload issues, the employers must address it through the guidance material that's now embedded, so that the fatigue management clause. So if you've got people that haven't been replaced on leave, for example, there's going to be a trigger there for you to immediately have it addressed with your employer, and it'll be dealt with under the occupational health and safety clause of the agreement, not the grievance procedure. So there's none of this, oh, well, the status quo remains until the grievance is resolved. Just keep working. And anyway, by the end of the day, the short-staffed issues resolved itself and the problem goes away. Well, no, this can be dealt with straight away under the clause, and it goes to also where you might be working a buddy shift as well. So you've got a new employee, or you've got an employee who's on a placement from TAFE because they're doing their certificate in PSA, for example, and you raise workload issues and fatigue issues, then the employer has to address it. If you are a shift worker, for example, and you're working night shift on the weekends or during the week, doesn't really matter, you're working night shift, you're fatigued, you raise it as an issue with your employer to say, look, I could really do with 40 winks during the night. Hey, if it's in the fatigue management guidance, it's good enough for the employers to also adopt, and it is in the fatigue guidance, nap time. Now, next slide, thanks, mate. I thought I'd take this opportunity too to say, if you're an OHS representative, please let us know. It might not be on our system that you're an OHS representative. It's really important that you do, because OHS representatives do get additional information over our general membership around health and safety. The BeSafe is the regional provider that we suggest people sign up to for their 5-day basic course or their yearly refresher course, so the 1-day course. And if you're in metropolitan areas, we recommend Victorian Trades Hall cancelled. If you don't have a health and safety representative for your area, your designated work group, I suggest that you have an election for a health and safety representative. They're a really, really important thing to have in your workplace to help protect your safety, and the employer must provide you with training as soon as possible when it comes to after the election process. So VTHC for Melbourne, BeSafe for regional Victoria. And there's going to be some little additional opportunities for health and safety representatives. And if you go to the next slide, thanks, Jose. Now, this idea came about from my time spent at Ballarat St John of God Hospital, one of the best employers I've ever worked for. And I was elected as a health and safety representative up in my unit. And because I showed a little passion for health and safety, I went off and did my training and got involved in, going around my unit and making sure that everything was working and doing safety checks and all that sort of stuff. The health and safety manager reached out to me at the time and said, how would you like to come and work one day a fortnight with me in the health and safety department? So I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So the health and safety manager and my unit manager got together, nutted it out, and I went over to the health and safety department on a secondment basis. So I just got paid my usual rate of pay while I was over there. And I'd work over there one day a fortnight. And when the health and safety manager was away on leave, I'd pick up some of those shifts that were available. Meanwhile, the other health and safety reps, for example, the one in the kitchen, was also doing the same thing. She was going over there working a day or two a fortnight. And when he went off on leave, she then, sorry, I'm just still admitting people as they're popping in. She would also cover him on leave. And it took a while for me to twig to realise what was happening. And that is that the health and safety manager there didn't have a health industry background at all. And even if he did, the departments within a hospital vary so much that it would be hard to come in and get your head around all the different areas. So he was picking our brains. So while we were in his department, he was learning about what we did in the workplace and what risks we faced every day. And what we did is we learnt from him what sort of training requirements there was needed to be a health and safety manager, and we were able to pick his brain as well about how to do his job. So it was all about a relationship building and shared learnings between the health and safety representative and the health and safety manager. Now, when the health and safety manager did retire, he was replaced by the OHS representative from the kitchen, who went on and did her certificate for an occupational health and safety. So this is a great opportunity if you're a health and safety rep out there, or you're thinking about it, that there could be opportunities for you in the workplace to spend some time up there in the health and safety department. It is at the employer's discretion whether or not they set up this secondment arrangement. But I've been working in the background with WorkSafe Victoria, and they want to run a couple of pilot programs across Victoria to see where these relationships and secondment arrangements exist, whether or not those hospitals have seen an overall reduction in workplace injuries in their workplace. But my pipe dream is really to see more health and safety representatives from our membership have a career beyond what they're doing at the moment and work up into the health and safety departments as a health and safety manager on a regular and ongoing basis. Next slide, thanks, mate. Well, as you know, no one's getting any younger, and our workforce in the public hospital system isn't getting any younger. I think the average age is around 53 now, working in the public health sector. And a lot of us have been doing the job for a very, very long time, and parts are wearing out. Yeah, so it's an injury isn't necessarily a broken bone, sprained wrist, or a twisted ankle. It might be a repeated stress injury. It might be something that's crept up over time. And as I said, we've got an aging workforce too. So we have had the odd member who's we've gone in to represent that has actually had early onset Alzheimer's as well, where employers have brought them in, wanted to put them on a performance improvement plan because they're not able to do the same level of work that they once were. Pretty unfair. I mean, they've got an aging workforce. So what we've got in this new agreement is that where under the investigation process, it's found or discovered that a person's not able to do the same sort of workloads as they once were because of a disability, and Alzheimer's disability, repeated stress injury to the wrist, for example, is a disability. Where it's been determined that you're not able to, clean the same floor space or do the same amount of laundry every day that you once could because you're carrying a disability, the employer won't be putting on a performance improvement plan anymore. It'll be dealt with under the equal opportunity clause of the enterprise bargaining agreement, where they're going to have assessments done and appropriate supports put in around you to keep you employed within that organisation. It might not necessarily be in the same job as what you're doing, but they're going to have to do those independent assessments to determine whether or not you're able to continue to work. So you won't be disciplined for not being able to do, clean, 3 wards a day anymore because you're just simply worn out. It'll be what sort of supports do you need so you can continue to do your job. But where you can't continue to do your job, there's other opportunities for you as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. Every hospital in the state of Victoria has a workplace trainer careers advisor. They've got now an expanded role. And part of that role will be where you've got a disability, an injury at work, where you can't return to your pre-injury work. The workplace trainer careers advisor will get involved at the earliest possible time to discuss and help you with retraining and redeployment into a role that you can do and essentially until you retire within that organisation, or it might be external to that organisation as well. So the other thing that the workplace trainer careers advisor role will do is that where a position's been deemed as being redundant, the employer is going to also set you up with opportunities to meet with your workplace trainer careers advisor for retraining opportunities and redeployment. And I'll just touch on in when Holden were closing down their plant in Adelaide quite a few years ago now, they knew they couldn't just retrain and redeploy their staff inside Holden because Holden's manufacturing was closing down altogether. They invested in training their staff into growth areas that were outside of manufacturing in South Australia for opportunities for people to be redeployed outside of that company, so keeping them employed. So the Workplace Training Careers Advisor might not be able to get you retrained and redeployed within the health sector, but they certainly should be looking at opportunities for retraining and redeployment outside of those, outside the health sector as well. Next slide, thanks, mate. So we've got 30 EFT workplace training careers advisors across the state. So that's, you know, one, it could be a part-time workplace trainer, it might be 2 workplace trainers. It was determined on how big the organisations were, how many direct employees there were. Under this enterprise bargaining agreement, we're going to add an additional 15 EFT across the state of Victoria. So what that'll mean is that where some hospitals have got part-time workplace trainer careers advisors, their positions will go to full-time, or it might be a hospital might have been a little underdone and needed additional staff, workplace trainer careers advisors. So it's going to be split up across the state of Victoria, and where we've got new hospitals or employers coming on board, they'll also be able to tap into existing workplace trainer careers advisors with some additional EFT to help support them as well. A good example of that is probably in Redcliffe's with that aged care facility, Jacaranda, coming on board in this agreement. They'll be able to access some training opportunities from the Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor out of Mildura Hospital, because they'll share the increase in EFT. So we as a union are really investing heavily in training opportunities for our members. We would like to see you take these opportunities and advance your careers in the health sector or even beyond. Next slide, thanks, mate. What we've also done is made the study leave a lot more accessible. How many people have approached the employer over the years and said, look, I want some study leave. And they'll say, what for? And you'll say, oh, I want to study allied health, for example. And they go, well, what's that got to do with cleaning? No, you can't have your study leave. Well, they won't be able to deny you study leave anymore. You apply for your study leave, and providing it's for the health industry, they can't unreasonably refuse. But it's also going further than that, where you can request flexible work arrangements as well. So it might be that you're doing a course that is an evening course, for example, and you're normally rostered an evening or 2 a week. You can request to not have any evening shifts for a period of time. So have some other shifts rostered instead, so you can attend TAFE in the evening. It might be that you've got a clinical placement at the end of your course as well, and you'd like to have some time, flexible time around that as well, so you can attend your clinical placements as well. So lots of opportunity there. And I think I talk about the third bit. I'll cover off it now anyway, and I will again later as well. So as I'm talking to cleaners and laundry hands here this afternoon, you've qualified for education incentive allowances. They'll be paid twice a year. It'll be paid once this year because the agreement hasn't started until a bit later than we would have liked. You'll get a once-off payment of $500, most likely in September this year. But each year after this, you'll get $250 in March and another $250 in September. And that's to encourage you to go on and do further education. So if the problem is that these you might want to do a free TAFE course, but it still costs you money to buy a computer or go and buy your course materials, then this extra money is there to help you with those financial hurdles that you might be facing. Now, you don't have to be enrolled or seeking to enroll in a course to qualify. It's automatic that you get this, but we encourage you to. We would like to see more of our members, particularly in the lower paid positions, that are it's really hard work that you're doing and you're getting worn out. take these opportunities and advance your careers, please. Next slide. Thanks, mate. Now, one of those pillar 3 things I mentioned before around opportunities where we're able to argue disadvantaged groups, well, we all know, you could have a male and a female working exactly the same position, side by side, and what happens when they retire? The female always retires with less superannuation than the man. Why? Because they're most likely going to take parental leave once or twice during their career, and just that 12 months off can really impact on the contributions and the end of times retirement superannuation pool. What we've been able to do in this enterprise bargaining agreement is we've negotiated for your super contributions to continue whilst you're off on parental leave, regardless of whether it's paid or unpaid. So you've got 3 months paid parental leave and then 9 months unpaid. You're going to have superannuation contributions put into your bank every four weeks or 2 months. Every 4 weeks, it's written there, right there in front of me on the slide. So every 4 weeks, you'll have a contribution put into your super account based on the previous year's income. This is absolutely massive for women in the health industry who are planning to have a family. And although you might not notice it now, come retirement, that additional super over that 12 months will make a huge difference for you to be able to retire comfortably or retire poor. So that's a fantastic outcome for our members. Next slide. Thanks, mate. We don't get a lot of disputes around classifications that I'm talking to tonight, but there are other classifications that are in dispute a lot. The employers have evolved their jobs and over time they've put on more and more types of roles and they've morphed into something else, but the employers don't want to recognise it. There's going to be an industry review panel where we can take disputes on people's classifications and say, look, we think this person's now no longer appropriately classified. We think that they're now classified as X instead of Z. And the industry review panel is made up of an independent chair, most likely going to be a retired commissioner with a health industry background. It will be a panel that's only accessible to union members, because the only people who can take things to the review panel are the employers through VHIA, who's their union, and you as union members. No individuals or other companies will be able to use this industry review panel. So instead of waiting months and months for a commission hearing and then waiting months and months for the commission to hand down their decision, this is a really speedy way to take things to an independent industry review panel and have classification matters resolved. So that's a fantastic outcome for our members as well. Now let's get on to specifics with environmental services, and what we'll do is jump across to the other PowerPoint presentation. Actually, before we start that, Jose, I might just give you guys an idea of what the Workplace Trainer Careers Advisor does. And we've done a little video, it only goes for a couple of minutes, and we'll just put that on first, and then we'll go to your presentation that's specific to you. Thanks, Jose.
Coming from a long road and the money's gone. All the games where you played your part from the very start just to come this far. You should know I believe in you. Every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it up now and bring it on. This will be your day. 'Cause baby, you were born to win. Never give up, never give in. You were born to win. Your destiny is victory. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Baby, and you knock it down. You're all set now to rock this town. You don't really need to play it low. Just get up and go. This is all your show. You should know I believe in you. Every race you run, you're my number one. Kick it off now and bring it on. This will be your day. 'Cause baby, you were born to win. Never give up, never give in. You were born to win. Your destiny is victory.
Need your help here.
Thank you very much, Jose. I think someone's got their microphone on as well. Put yourself on mute unless you're having a heart attack or need some assistance. Okay, let's get on to the environmental services presentation directly. Let's go on to the questions on everyone's list and nauseous work allowance. So yes, nauseous work allowance will continue into this enterprise bund agreement. We surveyed our members and asked whether or not they wanted to receive it weekly, twice a year, annually, twice, like we did last time, grossed up to be twice over the life of the agreement. It came back pretty clear that, look, every pay doesn't seem like a lot, but annually is better than every second year. So it won out. So what's going to happen in the first pay period containing the 1st of December each year, so right before Christmas, when we could all do with a little bit of a Christmas bonus, nauseous allowance will be paid $350 every year of the agreement to cleaners, laundry hands, patient transport officers. Next slide, thanks. Jose, thank you. Now, what's going to happen, as I mentioned before, around the education incentive allowance is that cleaners, patient transport assistants, laundry hands with more than 3 months experience will receive an education incentive allowance. This year, it will be most likely in September at $500, but each year after that of the agreement will be a $250 payment in March and a further $250 in September. You don't have to be enrolled in a course to get the education incentive allowance, but it's encouraging you, if there's a financial hurdle as to why you don't want to go on and do further education, this is there to help you. Now, why I put the code responders in here, you might be scratching your head on the next slide, thanks Jose. There's possibly some members from regional Victoria that aren't patient services assistants who also have responsibilities for responding to code grey. So in Melbourne, it's typically security officers, and there's also some PSAs that do the code responders. In regional areas, we know that there are other classifications. What happens is the hospital walks around and goes, well, you're the biggest, burliest looking bloke in the place. Hey, yeah, but I'm the gardener. Well, guess what? You can do the code responses. So we know that there are, in regional areas, other code responders, not PSAs. So what we've done is we've got a physical assessment. So if those who are responding to code greys will need to have a physical assessment to see whether or not they're actually capable of doing the job. Last thing, we've seen time and time again, middle-aged women running into a code grey response with some big burly bloke high on ice and having the bejesus beaten out of them. There's going to have to be some kind of physical, there will be a physical assessment on whether or not you're capable of responding to code greys and code blacks to start with. And if it is deemed as you're physically able, then what will happen is that you'll be paid an allowance whenever you're rostered to respond to code greys and code blacks. The allowance will be a sliding scale. It's not going to be a set allowance. And what it's going to is based on the difference between your rate of pay and a security officer grade 2. So if you're a PSA grade 2, for example, the allowance won't be as high as if you're a cleaner, for example. The allowance will be much higher. So essentially what it does is it pays you at the same rate as the security officer grade 2 for the shift that you've been rostered as a code grey responder. Next slide, thanks, mate. So what we did under the current agreement is we introduced a patient transport officer position. It was mainly used in Melbourne, and we would like to see it spread out more broadly across the regions and even across more public sector hospitals. Although there's a non-emergency ambulance in the background, these patient transport officers are not always driving those ambulances around. They are, for example, at the Austin, they're doing patient transport. It might be that they're responsible for helipad retrievals and transporting patients all around these really, really big hospitals in Melbourne. And what we did was through Victorian University and the Royal Melbourne Hospital, is that we developed a specific course for non-emergency patient transport officers within the hospital environment. And part of that course was, they still went off and did their driving. And what that's now enabled those patient transport officers to do is not just work for the hospital, but also work for those non-emergency patient transports across Victoria. So it's a really good career path opportunity for them. We tried to split the cleaner orderly role, so make it very clearly it's either cleaner or it's a orderly position, because we wanted to change the name of orderly to patient transport officer, but at a grade 1 or a grade 2 level. So make it very clear that they feed into the patient transport officer positions at those higher levels where they start getting their Cert 3s, Cert 4s and diploma and paramedic, for example. It was a bit too much for the employers to cope with. We couldn't separate, unfortunately, the two positions of cleaner and orderly, but what we've done is retitled it as cleaner patient transport assistant. So where you don't have a formal qualification for patient transport, you're going to be known as a patient transport assistant. Next slide, thanks, mate. The other thing that we've got a commitment from the employers with is that we want to limit the use of 457 visas and other working visas. And once again, through the use of the workplace training careers advisors, where we identify positions in the hospitals that are your 457s are being used, and the kitchens are a really good example of where people might have a Certificate 3 or a Certificate 4 or a diploma in commercial cooking. They could get a job in the kitchen as a trade cook. And at the moment, a lot of hospitals are using 457 visas because they just can't attract the cooks or the trade cooks or the chefs. So we've got a commitment from the employers that we will look at local workforce in preference to 457 visas. Next slide. So as mentioned before, we've changed the title from orderly cleaner with less than 3 months experience to cleaner patient transport assistant grade 1. And where an orderly cleaner more than 3 months experience will now be called cleaner patient transport assistant grade 2, and cleaner of windows will be reclassified as a cleaner grade 3. Next slide, thanks, mate. Laundry hands with less than 3 months experience. Sorter and packer of linen will be reclassified as laundry hand grade 1. And employees with more than 3 months experience as a laundry hand, sorter and packer of linen, or a laundry operator will be reclassified as laundry hand grade 2. And why the laundry operator comes in at that level is that the laundry operator and the laundry hand with more than 3 months experience get paid the same amount anyway. So let's just collapse the classification and call everyone a laundry hand grade 2. And the sorter and packer of linen, both at the level at the top and the bottom, also the wages are aligned with the laundry hand. And we know, a lot of good laundries out there are rotating their staff through all areas of the laundry to try and cut back on the repeated stress injuries. So, it's the same rate of pay. You're essentially doing all the same things. Let's just call your laundry hands grade 1 and 2, less than 3 months experience or more than 3 months experience. So there'll be a change in title there as well, and a couple of classifications that will disappear. So what are the wage increases on the last slide? And I know we're all used to talking percentage increases. We essentially haven't put a percentage increase out because the different classifications are getting different outcomes with these enterprise bargaining agreements, depending on how successful we were arguing Pillar 3. But for this particular group, as you can see, your laundry hand grade 1, for example, was getting paid slightly more than the cleaner patient transport assistant grade 1. It was $13.60. So what will happen is that the cleaner patient transport officer grade 1 will receive a slightly higher uplift. To align them, if you go to 2024, you'll see that the rates are paid in a line 922.80 and 922.80. So the cleaner patient transport officer will get slightly more of an uplift, but it will align it by the end of the agreement. It was just a bit of a glitch under the current agreement. We'll fix it over the life of this agreement. And as for the cleaner patient transport officer, patient transport assistant grade 2 and the laundry hand grade 2, which is where you probably all are, the wages align by at the moment, and they will align by the end of it. So you're getting exactly the same wage uplift over the life of the agreement, and that is 10.6% wage uplift over the life of the agreement. And as I mentioned and Diana mentioned right at the beginning, government's wages policy is 8%. You've done 2.6% above the government wages policy just in wages alone, let alone the rest of the entitlements, including the additional week's annual leave and all the rest of it we've been able to negotiate in for you. So without further ado, what I'll do is hand you over to Cameron, who's our industrial officer, who's been sitting in the background looking at the questions that are coming in. And we don't have many questions, so I've either been very, very thorough, or some of you have jumped on late and don't know how to put a question in. So wave your mouse on the screen. What will happen across the bottom is that you'll have a mute button on the left, video button. If you slide it all the way into the middle, there's a chat button. There's actually 3 on the chat at the moment, 3 questions, I think. If you click on that, type in there what your questions are, and Cameron will get started on answering them. So over to you, Cameron. Thank you very much.
Thanks,